Good morning, everyone. Listen to these words. Love will never enter immediately into any mind that truly wants it, but it must want it truly. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Love waits on welcome, not on time. When you want only love, you will see nothing else. This is, of course, a quote from the Course in Miracles. And we will start on that frequency of knowing that we are here to only see love and nothing else. And so it is.
Love is but a song we sing, and fear's the way we die. You can make mountains ring, or make the angels cry. Know the dove is on the wing, we may not know why. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together and love one another right now. Some may come and some may go. We shall truly pass. Spirit never left us here, it shall return at last. We are but a moment's sunlight, fading on the grass. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together and love one another right now. If you hear the song I sing, you will understand. You hold the keys to love and fear, all in your hand. It's just one key unlocks them both, all there at your command. Oh, come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together and love one another right now. Oh, come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together and love one another right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Please stand and join us in singing "We Are One in the Spirit." We are one in vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands and we lift our hearts as we offer up this praise unto your name. Please turn and greet the beautiful spirits of Christ and the people around you. 2, 3. I got a feeling that we're all the same. Gathered together, let the Spirit sing. Digging deep for courage, won't you do your thing? No worries, no one's looking. Keep your eyes on what we're cooking. Got this feeling we're all the same. We're all the same. I got this feeling that we're all the same. We're all the same. What I'm trying to say, celebrate life today. We must rely on our diversity. Monoculture never brings harmony. Celebrate your difference upon common ground. Communicate the vision that the world keeps on spinning. Got this feeling that we're all the same. We're all the same. I got this feeling we're all the same. We're all the same. So what I'm trying to say, celebrate life today. Today.
Whoa. Let's everybody. Whoa. Yeah, today's our stars. We have Tim Smith with his sax, and we have Reverend Paul Hasselbeck. What can I say? Welcome. And welcome everyone, and welcome everybody who's been already online with us. It's really an honor to be all together, being one with the one and one with one another. I do have some announcements, and of course the very first one is to let everybody know that Paul is already here, and that the fun continues right after the service. He will be signing books, and he will be offering a workshop, fellowship hall, from 1:30 to 3:30. So hope you can make it. It's been really instructive just to see the two philosophies coming together and seeing how they relate, and they empower the truth that we already know. Then next Sunday, the 16th, after Paul Hasselbeck, I don't know if that had anything to do, but we're bringing underwear, Paul, right after the service. As you know, every year we collect new men's and women's underwear for Healing Transitions, a nonprofit that supports Wake County adults recovering from homelessness and substance abuse. Once you go out into the lobby, you will see Karen Thorson, and she has an amazing poster there with all the items that you get ideas on what to bring next Sunday. So remember, next Sunday, bring new underwear. Just saying. And then 2 weeks from today, Sunday, February 23rd, Deborah Westmoreland will be doing a workshop on love plus self plus other, cultivating unconditional love. It will be in room 228, starting at 1:30. And then I have somebody very dear to me and to this church who's gonna come up here and do a special announcement on some amazing event we're having this Friday. Oh, Sandy Rifkin.
Good morning. Once again, I have the awesome job of inviting you to a unique visual music evening, a wonderful experience. So how many of you had come to the party celebrating Woodstock? Was that not a blast? Well, we're going to do a 180-degree turn, and this is going to be an evening for Valentine's on Friday night of beautiful music. We're going to have orchestras from all over the world, different genres of music, and we're going to highlight the music of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And that's the era, if you're like me, of my youth, when I was addicted to listening to the radio and the artists that made those songs popular. Many of those songs became American standards. They're part of the American songbook. And these artists, though they may be long gone, those songs still are in our heart. So don't be surprised if you come and start singing the words, because these words are the words that we remember. That night, come alone, come with a special someone, come to dance, or just come to see a fabulous show. So let me be the first to wish my church family happy Valentine's Day, and I'll see you Friday night.
And you're more than encouraged to bring your own booze, or, church, drink, appetizer, or dessert, because it's just essentially we're opening, providing the music, but everything else has to be provided by you. And ta-da! It's back. What's back? Yes, the open mic night. They've taken a break over the holidays, but now every third Sundays we start again, giving everybody here an opportunity to bring your talent, to show your talent, and let other people show you their talent. And it will be this February 20th, the first one on this year from 7 to 9. There's a flyer out there that beautifully prepared. You might want to encourage other people from the community to join. It's really, 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 really fun. Now switching gears, as you know, every so often we do honor our volunteers. And today we're really honoring somebody really, really special, asking Reverend Mimi, our pastoral care minister, to have Bonnie Childs, our beloved Bonnie. She's being honored as Volunteer of the Month.
Bonnie's more than volunteer of the month. She's volunteer of the years. She has been a prayer chaplain and worn this purple stole for 10 years. Many Sundays she is here to pray with many of you after services, and every single month for 10 years she has prayed with congregants by phone and given them a prayer message or individual prayer. So we are so grateful for her love. We had her come to the very first retreat, and she says, I'm not sure I can do this. And I really encouraged her to stick with it, and here we are, 10 years later, and she has given many, many beautiful prayers to many of us. And this is what several people have to say about your prayers.
Bonnie, I just look forward to your calls every month. Your prayers are wonderful, and I feel so uplifted. Thank you.
Hi, Bonnie. You always have the perfect words to say. I don't have to tell you what my concern is, but you always say the perfect words for what I need. Thank you.
Bonnie, one of the beautiful things about your prayer is your listening. You listen to the prayer request intently, and then you listen deeply to the still small voice of God, and what comes out is beauty, love, and hope. Thank you, Bonnie.
Bonnie, when you and I get to pray together, it makes me very happy, kind of like being excited to embrace my sister after a long absence. I just love praying with you. I feel you, and you make me a better me. Thank you.
Bonnie, words cannot express how wonderful it is to have you on my spiritual journey. You have been such a blessing to me. I truly love you, and God bless you always.
Bonnie, your spirituality has sustained me for such a long time. God bless you, and namaste.
Bonnie, I love you, and I want to paraphrase Maya Angelou. You may forget what people say, but you never forget how people make you feel, and you have always made me feel special and wonderful, because that's what you are. Thank you.
We'd like to give you these flowers. You received one white rose for every year that you've been a prayer chaplain, the same white rose that you received, and you committed to being a prayer chaplain every year. And we threw in one more for this coming year. So let's all give her our unity blessing together. We love you. We bless you. We appreciate you, and we behold the Christ in you. Thank you. We love you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, everyone. We would like to culminate this moment with a prayer. I'm sure it's the best way to just honor you deeper. So close your eyes at this moment. Take a deep and centering breath. And just bask in the energy of the divine that we get to co-create every Sunday, especially when we get to see and honor those who bring it in a special way, like Bonnie has for all these years. Just open the heart and feel at every level the amazing power and presence of God's love as you at this moment. And know that this is who we are, and what we are meant to express in the way we pray, in the way we live, in our commitment to serve. This is what really makes life worthwhile, what brings value and meaning, being a channel, an expression of our highest self, that is love. We come together to this realization, and we commit even further of this holy mission to be love, to see love, and to let love be expressed in all that come our way, in all the people that we love, and to extend it throughout all the planet and humanity. We are so blessed to be in this consciousness. And for this blessing and recognition, we say thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And now, little by little, we start shifting into this hymn that we sing every week. Surely the presence of the Lord, but surely the presence of love is here. So today we keep affirming it as we sing together.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and God's grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of our love is in this place.
Let us pray. As we center into this sacred holy space of prayer, we gently merge and align our awareness with the divine light, the essence and source of all creation. Realizing our interconnectedness and oneness with the Christ consciousness, we expand our consciousness to every name and intention in this prayer box, including those unnamed. We claim the cleansing and healing power of this eternal light to transform all circumstances to the highest truth, knowing that all divine manifestations occur in this light. We pour love and this note of truth onto all the hearts of all living beings. And we rest in the peace and the mystery of life, knowing there is only love. And so we let it be. Amen.
There is only
As we settle in to meditate, let us adjust our bodies so that we can be comfortable. And letting the body become comfortable, then we go deeper by paying attention to our breath. And let the breath be our only focus for a few moments, giving the mind a chance to rest on just one thing. As the mind begins to quiet, we can begin to open our hearts. And we do that by breathing into the heart space, the center of the chest. Let the heart begin to open. As we begin to feel the love in our hearts, let us ponder a question. What keeps us from loving more of the time? What part of our thinking or part of our doing keeps us from loving? As we do come to knot after knot, let us allow the divine to untie those knots. Invite the Holy Presence to transform your thoughts, to redirect your actions, to open your heart. That love may be the only thing we practice. Let us sit together in love in the holy silence.
To go from here and share this
We have great music. It's been a fun day musically today. It is my pleasure to also introduce to you Paul Hasselbeck. Paul Hasselbeck and I have been friends since 1994, when we were both beginning students at Unity School of Ministry, and I lived on a farm about 16 minutes away from town, and I invited all the misfits to come join me for dinner, and because I wanted to be with my people. And of course, Paul was one of them. We've been friends ever since. I had lunch with, actually coffee with Paul yesterday. Paul has been the Dean of Spiritual Education and Enrichment at Unity Village for a long time, and then they dissolved that whole program and gave it to the other side of Unity, in which Paul then has been able to devote even more of his time to writing. And one of the things he wrote, of course, is the book we're studying, which is the comparison, essentially, of Unity and the Course in Miracles. And in reading this book, one of the things that became more clear to me was I got to know my own church better by reading what he wrote about the comparison of these two. And part of the reason Paul is so good at this is that he has been using a rigorous intellectual approach to compiling what actually Charles and Myrtle Fillmore said 120 years ago, to put together a coherent way of understanding what Unity is saying, and you don't have to go in lots of places to figure out what they're saying, and you actually get the language decoded so that you can get the core idea. So what Paul will probably do today with us is to help us decode what we have felt was the truth, but we didn't have words that articulated it as well as he does often, to put it into simple, straightforward language. And it's not simple and straightforward in the thoughts that are there. It's quite deep. It's quite difficult in some ways to begin to wrap not only your mind around these thoughts, but to wrap our actions around a philosophy that is as deep and profound as Unity and the Course in Miracles are. So I don't want to blow too much smoke at him, but I had an experience while I was having coffee. And the experience was a click of, oh, so that's what that means. And it comes from being with somebody who's actually thought about it a lot and has jumped ahead and gone, here's what I understand it to be. And it was very spiritually educational and enriching. How about that? So let's invite Paul up. Paul Hasselbeck.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah. Wow. It's good to be back. Join me in knowing this. I'll say it and you repeat after me. It's another beautiful day in my consciousness. Let's say that together. It's another beautiful day in my consciousness. And I'm able to relax because one of the things as I travel around the country, I get to experience all kinds of music, right? And sometimes just a piano, and it's a whole mixture. And I'm always delighted when the music is this good. Where's our musicians? Come on. And it's really selfish why I'm so happy is because if I fall on my face, you're going to remember what you did, right? And that experience, you just forget, who was that guy, right? So I'm here to romp with you. I'm sort of like the metaphysics guy of Unity. I love to study it. I love to dig into it. And so my co-author, William Helen, and I put our heads together, and we put together this thing called Unity and A Course in Miracles, understanding their common path to spiritual awakening, because that's what both are about. So let's have the next slide. So here's what I plan to do. I'm going to give you a little background, an overview, Unity's 5 basic principles, included with the lens of A Course in Miracles, some distinctions, because they're not identical, there's synergy, and just one thing. Just one thing. That's what I'm going to wrap it up with. So in the background is that when I got to Unity Village, I was primarily a Course in Miracles person as I was digging deeper into Unity. And so, I knew that at that time, or prior to that time, Unity and A Course in Miracles were getting along together, and I thought I'd find someone who had written something that compared the two. And everything I found in the archives was very surface level, and it wasn't what I was looking for. And I kept thinking, someone ought to write a book comparing Unity and A Course in Miracles. And I kept thinking that. So along comes Bill Heller, and I tell him this, and he said, well, we should write that book. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I share that with you as a tip. If you're the one saying or thinking someone ought to, it's probably yours to do. It might take a lot of work, but it's yours to do. This book actually took us about 8 years to put together. So let's go on. Oh, so this is in here, just to help you relax. If what I'm sharing is like to your brain cell, next slide. My slides are available, and you can sign my email list, and I'll send you them. And I do that because sometimes something I say, like maybe what happened with Newsom yesterday, I say it in such a different way and distinct way that something moves or is adjusted in your consciousness. And one of my great joys is getting in and opening your brain and stirring a little bit, and hopefully so that you will get to a point where you're questioning your unquestioned answers. Because often when we're sitting here, we have our answers and we're not open to hearing something new. Next slide. So I like to start with this slide, and this is actually something from some of the unpublished material of Charles Fillmore. That's one of my great joys, is going into the archives and looking at stuff that wasn't published. And so he said, we have to develop in ourselves this capacity to know ourselves. So that's fundamental to unity, is knowing yourself. Self-awareness leads to self-knowledge. Get that? And then the self-knowledge is what we can use to launch our way into our spiritual growth. And he said, another person can suggest things, but we have to take the suggestions and apply our own understanding. What that means is, in a Unity church or a Unity seminar or a Unity seminary, we don't expect you to check your brain cell outside the door. We want you to bring it in and be fully engaged. Are you ready to do that? Okay, so this can be a little interactive. All right? So you're ready to do that? Yeah, sure. Talk back to me. Next. Okay, so let's look at some of the similarities. And we start with the 5 basic principles. Next slide. So they both use Christian terminology. However, in the process, they redefine that Christian terminology. And the way in which they redefine the Christian terminology is quite similar. I'll give you an example. So both Unity and Course in Miracles talk about Jesus, the man, and the Christ as something Jesus developed, that you and I can develop. And that Jesus Christ is not uniquely the Son of God, that we each have that inner divinity. And then in the Fillmore's time, it was perfectly appropriate for them to write with the male-centric language, because that was the custom of the time. And then when the Course in Miracles came around in the 60s, early 70s, that also is in very male-centric language. If you were around in that time, you know we hadn't quite graduated to where we are now, to where we do gender neutral, yes? And that's quite a stride ahead. However, when we go back to read that old material, sometimes that male-centric language gets in our way. Yes? Yes, okay. So being aware of that helps us, self-awareness, being aware of that helps us get that reaction out of the way. And this is magical. Somehow they use dualistic language to explain a non-dualistic system. Because in both systems, there is only one power and one presence. We learned that, right? There aren't opposing powers like we learned in traditional Christianity. And then they both recommend meditation, prayer, affirmations, and denials, and I will add forgiveness as a fundamental practice. Forgiveness is crucial. And forgiveness of self is very important. Next slide. So let's look at the 5 basic principles. Basically, one power, one presence. God is absolute good, everywhere present. By that, we do not mean God is good, like a human being will be good, or good like a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout. We mean God is the very principle of good, and we have a fancy pants word for that, benevolence. God is the principle of benevolence, and that's true for all of us, and that principle lives within us, and we use it to be benevolent, right? And then the Course in Miracles says God is all in a very literal sense. All being is in him who is all being. So fundamentally, one power, one presence, and that one power and one presence is everywhere totally present. There's not a piece of God in you, and a piece of God in you, and a piece of God in you, and a piece of God in you. If we add it all up, we have the totality of God, the totality of principle, the totality of God is present everywhere, and most importantly, at the point of view. Yes? Okay, next slide. So the next principle is the Christ within. Human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ spirit within, the very essences of God, and therefore they are inherently good. And the Course in Miracles says, deep in your mind, the Holy Christ in you is waiting your acknowledgement as you. Do you see how those two work together beautifully? And I don't agree with Connie. There's not a spark of a divine in you. There isn't a wave. There isn't a drop of the divine in you. The totality of the divine is at the point of view, and it's your potential, it's your full potential, let's put it that way. Got it? Okay. Next slide. So the next is the importance and the power of thought. I'm just going to read the yellow here. So in Unity, we say everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. Everything has its beginning in thought. And in Course in Miracles says, all thinking produces form at some level. And what's really interesting about that is that science is finally catching up with that. Did you know that? So isn't that amazing? That every thought you hold is remolding the neural pathways in your brain. And when you let go of an old belief, that neural pathway is broken down to build the new pathway. Isn't that interesting? And so do you see how that can relate to denials and affirmations? That we can use our thinking, feeling nature to restructure our own brains. That's amazing. Next, please. So prayer. Prayer is fundamental. And Connie said, prayer is creative thinking that heightens the connection with God mind and therefore brings forth wisdom, healing, prosperity, and everything good. Because when we remember the oneness we are, so we're never disconnected, but we might not be aware of our divinity. When we remember our divinity, we have access to wisdom, every principle, wisdom, wholeness, health, life, prosperity. And every principle is good, so we're aware of every principle. And then, of course, in Miracles, it says, true prayer must avoid the pitfall of asking to entreat. In Unity, we don't do begging prayers, right? We're not begging some God to change his or her mind. We are claiming our divinity and praying from that. And then the Course goes on to say, ask rather to receive what is already given, to accept what is already there. And the language sounds like God is giving it to you, but the truth is, every principle there ever was, ever will be, is right there present at you. There's not somebody giving it to you. They're already yours, because it's your innate nature. Next statement. And then you have to live the truth. Fundamentally, you got to practice what you preach. Knowing and understand the laws of life, also called truth, are not enough. A person must live the truth that he or she knows. And then in Course in Miracles says, yet it is doing the exercises that will make the goal of the Course possible. It requires action. It begins with a very basic sort of intellectual understanding of truth that matures into spiritual understanding. And then from spiritual understanding, we can learn to apply these truths in our life. Now, we use that word truth, and we often don't define it, and it's very vague. And the last time I was here and taught one class for you for SCE week, one of the students gave me this line: what happens in vagueness stays in vagueness. Okay? So instead of just simply saying truth, it's better if we talk about it. So what I like to say is truth and unity are these principles and laws of mind, and then we can even drill deeper into what they are specifically. Next slide. Let's look at some distinction. Next slide. So in unity and Course in Miracles, we can find talk that disses the ego. And it's very popular in the New Age movement and in the world to talk smack about the ego, isn't there? That the ego's bad. And in fact, because we don't have a devil, we now make the ego the opposer. We make the ego the devil. And the Course in Miracles, most of what it writes about makes ego the bad guy. In unity, we find a similar thing, but then Charles takes it a step further. So let's look at this. So the adverse ego is when the ego attaches itself to sense consciousness. All that means is when from the point of me, from my personality, I'm taking all of my cues from what my senses are telling me rather than from the centered cue of the divine within me. That's all that means. And Charles called this the adverse ego. It is the adverse ego that causes all the trouble in the world. And you know this. You know, it's when our ugly twin shows up that we do the things that we look back on that we shouldn't do. And then the Course in Miracles says the ego is idolatry, the sign of a limited and separate self, born in a body, doomed to suffer, and to end its life in death. Wow. Is that ever heavy? Next slide. So here's what Charles does with it. So he talks about the ego as the I. The ego is man, and by reason of his divinity. Did you hear that? That's a statement when I first read it that brought my mind to stillness. It was like, because there, in plain language, Charles is saying that the ego, its basic essence, is divine. And we never think of the ego that way. By reason of the ego's divinity, the ego makes and remakes as it wills. Do you notice you can do that? Do you notice that's how powerful you are? You are the king or queen of your own consciousness and of your life. You are making it and remaking it every day, every second. Your life doesn't happen to you. You are manifesting it. And then he goes on to say, in this lies the ego's greatest strength and the ego's greatest weakness. Do we notice that? I sure do. The ego of itself is possessed of nothing because it depends on its divinity to wreak havoc or joy. It is a mere ignorant child of innocence floating in the mind of being, but through this last yellow piece, really get this. Through the door of its consciousness must pass all the treasures of God. So, what I like to think of, if we didn't have an ego, we'd be like boneless chickens, you know. It's our egos that help us show up, isn't it? Next slide. And then we can talk about the body and healing and some of the distinctions that happen there, but there are similarities too. So in the Course in Miracles, we read, God did not make the body. What? But I've been told since I was little that God made everything. God made my body, God made the physical universe. Well, the Course doesn't agree with that. And the reason why is because the body is destructible and God is not. And therefore it is not of the kingdom. The body is the symbol of what you think you are. It is clearly a separation device and therefore does not exist. Well, Let's talk about that illusion thing and not being real. Well, in our relative existence, we exist, don't we? Okay? What it really means is not permanent. Not permanent. Changeable. The divine is permanent. Doesn't change. Next slide. So, Charles agreed on one level. Body is the outer expression of consciousness, the precipitation of the thinking part of man. God created the idea of body of man as a self-perpetuating, self-renewing organism which man reconstructs into his own body. So God, to me, God consists of the principle of body that we then use to manifest our individual bodies. Now, we're not aware of we're doing it because when we're doing it, we're essentially in the womb of our mothers. And for us, it's not a conscious act. And so he says, so man reconstructs this idea into a body. So God creates the body idea or divine idea, and man, by his thinking, makes it manifest. And Charles and both the Course agree that the whole universe is manifested from the divine, but it isn't the divine that's doing the manifesting. That consciousness, some way, somehow, is doing that. Next slide. So let's look at another synergy, really. Next slide. So in unity, the main focus of unity teachings is that we develop and express our Christ consciousness. Actually, that we develop and express the Christ principle into the Christ consciousness. And then it teaches a little bit about the ego. And then, on the other hand, the Course in Miracles teaches about how to undo the ego's thought system while telling us a little bit that we are divine and we are the Christ. So we have one system that teaches us how to express that Christ principle as Christ consciousness, mainly through the 12 powers. And we have another system that tells us how to undo what gets in the way, the negative ego. If you work them together, you have a synergy. You see that? So while they're not identical, they work together. Next slide. And another point in where they agree is this. Nothing else matters if you do just this one thing, and we've already been singing about it here. Let's look at it. So unity says basically be the best you can be, or in Christian terms, be the best Christ you can be, which isn't be the best Jesus you can be. It's to be the best human you can be based on these divine principles, based on your divinity. Course in Miracles says everything is either love or a call for love. So when someone is loving with you, how do you respond? With love. But when somebody's nasty or angry with you, what's your initial response? Negative, right? Course in Miracles says all of those negative things coming at you are really a call for love. They're really an inept way of that person saying, please love me, please see me, please recognize me, please love me. Won't you love me, please? But they don't have a skillful way of doing it. So if we can see beyond that mask and see what they're really asking, we can give it, yes? So let's look at this a little deeper. So the reason why being the best Christ you can be is about everything being in love or a call for love is because Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And then he said that was the greatest and first commandment, and then he said the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Well, the tricky part there is loving ourselves, isn't it? Isn't that where we get in trouble? We have a hard time sometimes loving ourselves. So often we've got to start there. How do you love yourself? How do you forgive yourself? How do you offer yourself grace? And then he also said, love your neighbors. Well, that includes everybody. Love your enemies. There's your enemies, yourself, your neighbors, and God. What's left? Maybe our dogs or cats. So fundamentally, they're saying the same thing. The response we should train ourselves to do is to always respond in love, even at that moment when from our adverse ego, we want to respond negatively. Next slide. So remember, know yourself and learn to apply what you know from that higher level of spiritual consciousness. Next slide. And remember, like Ellen says, be kind to one another. Love one another. And so it is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let's take that into prayer. Take a deep breath. Breathing in and breathing out. Deep breath in, deep breath out. When we do that, when we take a slow breath in, and a slow breath out, we actually trigger something within us called the calm and connect response. It is the antidote to everything. When you trigger yourself and you're acting in fight, flight, or freeze, invest just 30 seconds breathing in and breathing out, and it overrides all of that reaction. And shifts you from that automatic, quick response and reestablishes you in control, in your power, using that one power and one presence in a magnificent way. Breathing in and breathing out, and remembering that fundamental to you, the essence of you, your divine identity, is founded on these divine principles. You are the principle of love. You are the principle of benevolence. You are the principle of generosity. And we pause and remember that, we can respond in grace, offering a hand or a hug in love. Because fundamentally, that is what we're here to do. To feel that truth in you and feel gratitude for this truth. Feel it deeply. And know that at the point of you is this magnificence that is pure potential, waiting to be activated by your thoughts and feelings right here and now. And those thoughts and those feelings don't control you. You control control them, because you create them. And just feel the gratitude for the awareness of the powerful being you are right here and now. And so it is. Amen.
I have a few announcements before we get to the offering. Let me just say that Paul will be outside. He'll be signing books if you would like your book signed. He'll also be doing the workshop at 1:30, but in between, the kids will be offering some lunch if you want to buy a lunch here. You have about an hour and 40 minutes to get back, but if you want to just stay here, they have a lunch for $10. And also after the church, if you don't want to eat but you want to be with me, I have a question and answer period, which we do on the second Sunday of every month. Is that today? Oddly enough, it is. So if you want to be upstairs in the far room up there, come join me. And also I want to say that I'm also doing a class on the 13th, which is a Thursday. Starting this Thursday, we do a class on affirmative prayer, the style of prayer that Unity has made its trademark, and also the 5 principles, which is a distillation of the Unity philosophy down into 5 principles. So consider that if you would, please. Now, let's consider their offering. We're a very fortunate group. We have a beautiful place to be. The heat's on. We have food out there. We have an amazing musical experience here every Sunday. And today we have an outstanding speaker from Kansas City. All of it is provided in part because of the generosity that you give. So with that in mind, let's bless our gifts and consider what lucky people we really are. And say these words together. Together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And now we turn it over to the star of the show.
One power, one power, one power. There's one power invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power indescribable, yet with every word we say, mysterious until you know the truth. It's as simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, angel wings or heaven's doors. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? It's the power of the love in you and me. One power, one power. We speak so many languages, have different clothing, different colors, different names. But different is only dangerous when we forget that in the heart we're all the same. We'll remember once we close our eyes to see that such distances were never meant to be. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, Hashem, or heaven's doors. It's Muhammad, it's your mind, it's your soul, or it's your sign. It's the universe, it's music, Mother Earth, or Father Time. But whatever name we give it, it's just one power, can't you see? Whatever name you give it, it's the very air we breathe. It's the power of the love that lives in you.
One power.
All we are is one power. One power. One power. It's the moment of creation. It's an everlasting peace. It's the freedom of forgiveness. It's the sweetness of release. It's the joy of inspiration. It's the sunshine on your face. It's the beauty of all nations and the boundlessness of space. It's the beauty of a baby, the serenity of sleep. It's the anger we abandon, for it's the love that is most deep. It's one power, one power. Oh, the power of the Lord. One power, one power, It's the power of, in the love that lives in you. It lives in you and me. It's the power of the love. It lives forever in you and me.
Good morning. My name is Linda Carnes. I am a member of Unity Women of Color. We are spiritual women of color, supporting, encouraging, and celebrating life and purpose here at Unity of the Triangle. Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing the central roles of Blacks in American history. Also known as African American History Month, the event grew out of the Negro History Week, the brainchild of noted historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. Other countries, including Canada and the United Kingdom, also devote a month to celebrate Black history and achievements of prominent African Americans. For this month, we decided to focus on African American women. Today, we honor a woman who achieved greatness in the area of sports, Althea Neal Gibson. Althea Neal Gibson was an American tennis player and professional golfer, and the first African American to win a Grand Slam tennis championship. I'm very happy to introduce the beautiful program that will be presented by our wonderful young people. Thank you.
Althea Gibson was born in South Carolina on August 25th, 1927, and she passed away September 23rd, 2003. She became the first African American to play in Wimbledon, and she won the singles and doubles in Wimbledon in 1957, as well as winning U.S. Opening in 1958. At retirement in 1971, Gibson was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Let's all stand. We're going to give the youth a blessing. And remembering this for ourselves as we say it for them also, let's say these words from our heart together. You are loved, special, and important just the way you are. Now let's join hands and sing the peace song. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Enjoy your week.